presumably, Mr. Johnson, you have no qualms whatsoever about trying to drum up business with a country with such an appalling record on human rights and democracy.
Yeah. No, there's two extraordinary things happening at the moment, Dermot. And obviously, as Mayor of London, my job is to promote the city and to drum up business for our great capital. What you're seeing at the moment from China is a huge wave of investment and confidence in London, and that's been expressed in all sorts of ways, whether it's the big investments at Vauxhall Nine Elms Battersea, or the amazing plans to rebuild Crystal Palace, or the huge plan for the Royal Albert Dock. You're seeing big Chinese confidence in London over all sorts of sectors, but also, really encouragingly, an extraordinary boom in British exports and indeed London exports to China. And I'm here in this brand pavilion here in the middle of Beijing, where there's all sorts of top UK brands: Jaguar Land Rover, Twinings tea, Church's shoes, all sorts of stuff. Marks and Spencer, and it's walking out of the shops.
Right. Well, OK, I know there's a lot of noise there, but presumably you didn't hear my question. I was asking about human rights and democracy. They've got an appalling record. The Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister had a perfect right to meet the Dalai Lama, didn't they? And the Chinese were wrong to sulk about it.
Yeah. I don't think you heard my answer, Dermot, which was that my job as mayor is not to have a foreign policy, but to get on and promote the interests of the greatest city on earth, which is what we're doing. And if you'll remember, I came to Beijing in 2008, and I said then that I wanted to see greater relationships between London and Beijing. I wanted to see an intensification of that relationship, and it really is happening. We're seeing many more foreign students and many more Chinese students now coming to London than there were back in 2008. It's gone up by about 150% almost, and that is good news. There is still a way to go, as I'm sure you know, on some of the visa issues more widely. We are still a bit concerned that we're losing tourists, affluent Chinese tourists, of whom there are huge numbers, who could be spending money in the UK, who could be driving jobs and growth in the UK, but who instead are being diverted to other European countries. It's getting better. We are seeing a big increase now in tourists across the board and from China as well, but it could be better still, and that's something obviously we're working on as well.
Would you like to meet the Dalai Lama?
My job is to get on and promote London, Dermot, and there are many interesting foreign policy problems around the world with which I suppose I could involve myself. Whether or not that would improve global hopes for a resolution of those crises, I have my reservations. I've got to get on and do what I can to promote investment in the greatest city on earth and to champion some of these unbelievable British success stories, which you don't actually hear that much about. Jaguar Land Rover, I think I'm right, if I got it right, they've sold something like 3 billion quid's worth of motors to China just in the last year or so.
Wow. You're not allowed to mention the spiritual leader of Tibet there. Can you say his name?
Yeah, the Dalai Lama. You've mentioned him repeatedly, but this is not the reason I'm here in China. And I think since you've now had 4 goes at this, Dermot, and I've given you the same answer every time, I hope we can respectfully, move on to the real agenda, which is intensifying the links between London and Beijing. And today I signed what I think was quite a good memorandum with the mayor of Beijing, so we can work together on partnerships across the scientific front. And they've got a huge number of higher education institutions here. They also have, obviously, the same sort of environmental concerns as we do in London. How do you tackle air quality? These are things we're working on together.
Yeah, I mean, but, the point is, I mean, the only reason I'm bang on about it is that the point is that, frankly, they're too mighty for us not to do business with them, and we have to ignore their appalling record on human rights and democracy. We lecture smaller countries about it, but we can't do that to China. Well,
look, I think I've now said this. This is the 5th time. I'm coming up for air again. I'm just repeating that it's not my job as mayor to insert myself into controversial areas of international dispute. My job is to promote the interests of the city, and you're seeing an intensifying partnership, as I say, between London and Beijing, and that's
but you
that's
write
great news
you
for
write
Londoners.
for a national newspaper. You write for a national newspaper, and you comment on international affairs all the time.
Well, you know, what I'm here to do, if you don't mind, is not to talk about whatever I may or may not write in newspapers. I'm here to talk about what is happening now between London and Beijing. And it is an extraordinary story of the intensification of relationships, and we need to build on it. Let's face it, Dermot, this is a country that is growing at a huge rate. There's been a bit of a slowdown perhaps, but it is still growing at 7 or 8% a year. They urgently need some of the ideas, the technology that perhaps we have in the UK. There are things that we can offer. Maybe there are some things we can help with on some of the environmental concerns, for instance. They're certainly interested in some of the brands that we've got to sell. There are big partnerships to develop, and I think most people would accept to be remiss of us as a city authority not to do that.